Hi there, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live video premiere. Today we're actually looking back at some key individuals, looking at Don Hatley and his suspicious behaviour early on in the case, as well as a suspicious comment by Ed Harshbarger. Going to be combining both together today, also incorporating the map style visual analysis to tell a story. The theme of today is how did different individuals react at the news of Dylan Rounds going missing? How did it come out? How did people react to that news in the early days? That's what the discussion is. As we go throughout this video, be sure to share your thoughts, opinions in the live chat on the right hand side of the screen. You can talk about a range of other stuff as well, okay? Of course, shout out to the recent people for their presence and them watching and sharing their thoughts in the previous videos. We have been quite full on recently. There's been a lot to talk about, a lot going on in the background. And as for today's video, it's about cutting it up, focusing on one singular area, okay? Concentrate on it, make more sense. I think that's what's necessary. We can also look back at the comments of yesterday's video, one of them at least, the one to do with Dylan Rounds, and see what questions are there if they need answering, any additional information too. As well, I can share my thoughts in general, just brief, on the Dylan Rounds documentary as well, situations with that, just give you my thoughts, okay? So yeah, there's still things to cover within this case. And that's pretty much it. I think if you haven't already, I've got some recent videos on my channel. Be sure to check them out. Links will be down below in the pinned comment section, as well as additional links if you wish to check them out. Of course, YouTube is still a mess. As for any forms or means of protesting against them, the PayPal link is down below if you wish to visit that. If not, perfectly fine, understandable. So I think to kick things off, just give you my thoughts on what's recently happened. So when was it now? Several days ago, around the time of looking at Corey's comments, when we went through quite a few of them in one video, I made a prediction, and I think most of you will remember. If you can't, what I said back then was I have a feeling that bad things are going to happen within the case. Information, how it's distributed, etc. Bad things are on the horizon. And that's exactly what's happened in a sense, and maybe more to come. So once again, I got it right, just like many other things with predictions, specifically speaking. What's the example of bad things happening? Well, first of all, we've got people showing their true colours, of course, but more specifically, that documentary, I assume part 1. Part 2, not quite sure about. Couple of people here and there, more so outsiders, have highlighted that Warlike Ref made an appearance in the documentary. It was further confirmed by a viewer on my channel who's a good individual, shout out to them, who did watch the documentary themselves and, got an understanding of it. So to summarise things, for people that haven't watched the documentary, the area and coverage within the documentary incorporates mainly me almost as the figurehead of YouTube, that I'm the first person to make an appearance on screen with my face, my voice, etc. And it was more to do following the lines and the theme of conspiracy theories. Not just standard theories and ideas, but conspiracies, okay? It depicted parts where they were going through several videos, all of which were my videos. So that just further reinforces how I am the figurehead in the Dylan Rounds case coverage online. as well as majority of the videos being of mine, which reinforces that I am out there, even though there might be more popular videos that shadow mine. But it also reinforces the fact that obviously I have made the most videos on this case compared to any other person out there. Other people creating a measly 10 to 20 videos. I have officially uploaded about 363 videos on the case. And there's still more videos to come, okay? So the overall picture being painted, besides me, is that YouTubers are bad in the Dylan Rounds case, that they're kind of evil. It's not much positive has come out of it. I believe there was a section where Justin Rounds himself, in general, holistically labelled YouTubers as bad people, okay? So, in addition to that, the other section, which one of the viewers that watched the documentary highlighted and confirmed, was the documentary was stating that Warlike Raff was the individual to create the idea of Dylan Rounds being kidnapped, put into a horse box, and then hung, or supposedly accidentally hung. Now, the video which talked about that back then, it was actually quoting what Bob Farrell originally said on his channel from his sources at the time. The reality is, all one has to do is get a recording, snip it, crop it, take out some audio. So instead of the full sentence being, and yes, from what's been talked about elsewhere, such as on Bob Farrell's channel, the idea that Dylan Rounds hung himself or accidentally hung himself in a trailer, that's what's been talked about. The first part of that sentence was snipped, cut off. So it was just basically one theory or one idea that Dylan Rounds, this has happened to him in the trailer. So by eliminating certain words, it sounds as if it's coming from my mouth, okay? So you could say that the documentary was definitely following an agenda to paint YouTubers overall as bad. The simple fact that Warlike Raff is the most consistent, frequent, dedicated individual to the case out there. Warlike Raff being the individual that's put in the most work and most effort above everybody else out there within this case. Obviously, the figurehead wise, what else was leading to being called out in the documentary. That's basically it, okay? So this is the thing. If you've got, well, supposed professionals out there that conduct this and piece it together, do their supposed research, it's not looking too good, is it? It's not exactly promising that people out there are that incompetent, right? No matter what level or scale on the ladder a person is, incompetence is shown. But this is the thing. When you demonstrate balance, you become an enemy of all sides. That's just how it is. By providing different points of views and perspectives, it's interpreted as if it's coming from me, but it's coming from other people, right? Maybe to eliminate that confusion would be if you had additional people on panel that gave their thoughts and ideas, but it still isn't a true sample or representative of the population out there. So it'd still be pointless, okay? It's like speaking on behalf of what people have said with time, bringing it back into light, but obviously there's quite a few humans out there that don't understand the language and wording, and there's others out there that will cut things out and then piece it together. I mean, you know, a very good example to highlight and show is previously when Jim Terry back then was on some live panel or something, he said within a sentence the N word, but there was a different context behind it. When Salty Pancakes heard about it, Salty Pancakes edited the video and cut it down to a few sentences where it seemed as if Jim Terry was, being negative and calling out people using the N word. But that was just edited down to make it seem like that. There was context behind it. So, an example like that, you can get labelled, you can get called out falsely, all because of an edit, how it was done, making it seem like you're saying something else when you weren't, right? Without that context and backstory, when other people come on in to listen, they're going to think the worst first-time impressions, right? So it's the same with the Dylan Rounds documentary. That's why I can understand how things like this can happen, okay? Now, what happens next? Who knows? One thing to highlight, if Justin Rounds being present out there calling out YouTubers, it seems as if there's a bit of memory loss, like with other people out there, because there was a time in the past where Justin Rounds, the first time Candice Cooley appeared on No Thanks channel, a live stream, was it a call-in? Not so much. It was a Q&A, answering questions and people in the chat participating in a way. The first time that ever happened, Justin Rounds was angry and on Facebook posted blasting, criticising No Thanks, the style of it, for Candice Cooley even appearing on the show. Justin Rounds was very negative of it. And I actually documented that on my channel. If you look back, I did document it. But what happened after that was Justin Rounds apologised and said, no, actually, upon listening to it, it was done very well. You did a very good job. No thanks. That's all good. So Justin Rounds acknowledged at the time the likes of no thanks. Okay. As for Candice Cooley, not much talk about Candice Cooley when it comes to YouTube. If there was any criticism, you would simply reply back and say, well, if you hate YouTube so much, then why did you seek YouTube as a platform to get your voice out and to spread awareness then and to clear the story and clear the BS up, right? We haven't got to that stage yet, but whilst people out there can say this, they were doing a different action earlier on. So they've kind of done a 180 turn in a way. I do think in general there's quite a few humans out there that have some kind of memory loss. There's many other people out there that they don't like the taste of their own medicine. But it's okay for them to do something, say something, but when anyone else does it, they're labelled as bad people. I think the overall summary and conclusion can come down to, based off other people's input of idiots out there, is that hard work, dedication, frequency, and consistency equals being a bad person. Exactly. Is there anything else to highlight before we continue any further? We've got the hyenas gathering and sounding like them as well. That's all normal. That's what will happen, okay? As I said, when we're talking about downfall periods, we're talking about some kind of controversial event, negative time, other people out there will jump upon it. Kind of like the Candice Howard situation, people jumped upon that. With Warlike Wrath being mentioned within the documentary, arguably in a negative light, people jump upon that. That's normal, because back in the past, when those type of people went through negative stuff, other people out there jumped on them. It's just a back and forth thing. It's bound to happen. That's just human behavior, okay? Would I make a prediction? I can make a prediction right now if you want me to. More of a long-term one because it can impact several people but not all at the same time. So there are key terms, keywords, not its moment in time, but just roughly speaking, that with time, humans that are bored, almost like a wagon moving, that at some point they can be kicked off, right? Some humans out there that are in a decent situation for now, but things could backfire down the line just simply because of patterns of what's happened to previous people. Is once they've been kicked off that wagon, where do they go next? And as for the concept with my mindset, when humans act such a certain way, the mind does change with time, right? Very interesting. I'm just trying to think, was there anything else to highlight? Of course, you can share your thoughts in the chat to what you think. If there's anyone in the chat that did watch the documentary, or at least part one, share your thoughts, your review. If you want to leave more comments down below, feel free to do so. Is there anything else to highlight? I mean, Twitter, completely unrelated, to do with YouTube. Had a little look at that. Will I use it in the future? I think I'll just experiment briefly, right? If it's like a way of sharing videos, then I guess that can be done. When it came to TikTok in the past, sharing news on the Dylan Rounds case, making a direct video on TikTok was more effective than making a little post acknowledging a link to my video on YouTube, if that makes sense. I feel that if you want to share videos to spread awareness, to get the word out there about a finding, an observation, it's probably best to do so on like Twitter, Reddit, but maybe not so much the Dylan Rounds case because it's niche. Gaming, that can work there. When I was playing Mordhau in the past, I shared it to the community of the game on Reddit, and then people viewed the video. You got to find platforms where people are willing to click on the link to then view your video on YouTube. Twitter could be an example, I guess, just see what happens down the line. As for Rumble, waste of time, okay? Will I keep the Rumble account? I don't think so. I just think it's purely a waste of time, to be honest. It serves no purpose or use, ineffective. So yeah, I'll probably be cleansing that, just see how that goes. Yeah, the YouTube still, despite everything, is the main platform to focus on, just like how it is worldwide. Yeah, there's not really much more I can say at this moment in time. I think my overall prediction, though, from day one of this case has come true. That warlike wrath, regardless of any situation, will always be the black sheep. That's definitely a key factor, but I've, embroidered it within my mindset that that's just how it goes, because when one is most realistic and in tune with reality, doesn't always mean to say it equals being positive, okay? And obviously in this world, when you're not positive, you are an enemy of people. That's just how it is. In addition, though, whilst being realistic, honest, and kind of straight to the point, or as best as one can be, it doesn't equal being a truth seeker. Do you know in general? Oh, you're all for the truth and revealing this and revealing that. No, I'm not associating myself with that. When it came to the Kenny Veach case and you had truth seekers, it was just a bunch of hippie delusional individuals that were all talking about 4D vibrations and all kinds of wacky stuff going on, okay? It went a bit off topic, went a bit off tangent, okay? Just simple common sense, straight to the point. But anyway, returning back to Justin Rounds, I think, depending what happens with time, although Justin doesn't talk much, and I think most people can acknowledge that, with time, there's a pattern. Outburst, getting things off his chest, tends to be something of a form of resistance. And I'd argue that the more times Justin does that, the more questionable it becomes in a way. Anyway, that aside, let's return back to the comments of yesterday's video. Actually, I think, one other thing just to acknowledge, okay? I've noticed another pattern with time where humans say, Warlike Raph, why do you talk too slow? Speed up when talking. Let me take my time to respond to that. What's the time? Oh, it's time to respond. Okay, I will do. My response to that is, why don't you click the settings, the gear icon, and select the speed to ×2? It's that simple. If you think I'm talking too slow, speed up the video. You got the chance, you got the opportunity, take action. If not, what's the point sitting there complaining and whining? You've got options, make use of them. Simple as. I think a lot of humans out there aren't even aware of the speed on videos. Must be the case, because they wouldn't be in this place complaining if they knew about it. Oh well, there you go. So let's return back to the comments of last night's video, answer any questions, and follow on from that. Well, here we are. We've got the comments. We adjust it to the newest. Start from the bottom. Haven't got too many to get through. Cleo, long times from now. By the way, thank you all at Ref. Awareness for Dylan Brown's Can't Stop, Won't Stop. Shout out to Cleo. Who we got here? New viewer from the looks of it. M. Squires. Okay. See what they say. For your information, there was a skeleton jawbone and bone fragments found recently at Bear Lake, just north of Ogden, Utah. Remains have not been identified. Wasn't Chase Venstra at Pizza Place in Ogden the weekend Dylan went missing? That is true. It was about 22:30 p.m. And then after that, supposedly Chase Venstra was taken back to the Flying J's Snowville at night time. Okay. The reason why it can be, supposedly proved is because there was CCTV footage at Little Caesars Pizza at that time of Chase being in Ogden. Okay. Now, upon reading this comment once again, I can understand why you're associating one thing with another. Okay. Being north of Ogden, I guess not that far away, and Chase Venstra being around that area could have taken a trip onwards elsewhere later or beforehand. I understand. General thoughts are that those bones seem to appear quite old. Well, you never know. I think some person was talking about maybe a bit more ancient. I guess time will tell. We'll just see what the responses are. Tom, do we know if Chase was on camera with anybody that way now? Ogden is 1 hour, 45 minutes from Bear Lake. I assume that's what you mean, Tom. The reason why it's come up in blue because YouTube auto detects timestamps associated with the video itself, if that makes sense. I mean, all we've ever heard was Chase Venstra was here on CCTV, and then there, and then over there. Not once did Candice Cooley refer to anybody else being with him. I wonder why. Is it because Candice Cooley didn't know about another individual being present, or she just felt that that person was irrelevant because she just didn't know the guy's name at the time who was with Chase? Makes you think. Sometimes if your mind is so focused on one individual, you kind of neglect others who may be present at that time. I think it's like more of a psychological effect that. I remember it in the past where you were told, like a psychological study, you were told to focus on the person juggling the ball in front of you. And then you were told afterwards, as like a form of recall, how many times did the person juggle the ball? What colours were the balls? What clothing did the person wear? And did you see the gorilla walk across the stage in the background? And most people would say, what? What gorilla? Never saw it. It's because you were so focused in on that one singular individual that everything else around you, your perception wasn't acknowledging it, right? So it could follow like that within the Dylan Rounds case. Once again, psychology can play a role to an extent. Click that off. Do we do a poll? If we do a casual poll, it can be the bones found at the Bear Lake. Do you believe it's of Dylan Rounds, Aidan Clune, or anybody else? Let me know your thoughts. Weezer saying, sorry if I missed any questions in chat. I kept getting interrupted. It's fine. It's okay. I don't think anything was really missed. Questions were answered in the end, so that's fine. If anyone does have further questions, though, feel free to list them in the comment section of this video down below. And obviously, if you wish to spread awareness of the case and the discussions today, feel free to hit the thumbs up and feel free to like the video. Okay. We got Cleo there. Oh, we got a new viewer called Kathy. We got another Kathy. She says, "Who is the individual that beat on Brenner?" I didn't know Brenner got beat up. I heard in the past that Brenner got into scuffles and it led to him being pushed over or something and seriously injuring his leg ankle. But that was back then. Do you mean who did Brenner beat up? If that's what you're referring to, in 2021, aggravated assault, which did pen for quite some time, but eventually catch up on Brenner. Okay. At some other point, Bibbins got punched in the jaw by Brenner. So I don't know if that answers your question, Kathy. The only other thing I can think of is if you're referring to Chase Venstra getting beat up or jumped, that was by Brenner after the Dylan Rounds disappearance. As I said, let me know if that answers. Skeptical. What did I want to say? No, I can't remember. There wasn't anything. Skeptical saying, catching up on a couple of videos and checking out the chat on this one, I agree with Indiana, Tom Evans and Miss Canada. Why aren't any of us hearing most of these details? Oh, okay. Why are we? Why are we hearing these details for the first time? The devil is in the details, as they say, no stone left unturned, and question absolutely everyone. Pay careful attention to the fine print and vague interpretations for the definition of purpose, meaning and clarity of something, or face the consequences of not pointing out specific information or instructions succinctly stated, copied as pasted from Google, information or disinformation. I guess that's what we're here to figure out. I mean, when it comes to misinformation and confusion, it's not something we're new to. It's been like that since day one of the case. So you kind of know what to expect and you follow with caution these days. Sure, I can listen to a lot, but it doesn't mean to say I'm going to internalize it all and get brainwashed either. Obviously, and I don't know if anyone else agrees, but at least from my point of view, times where we've had dumps of information and material talks, rumours, events, it's been full on. Waited till the next East Idaho News Channel interview with Candice Justin or something like that, or with No Thanks. And at a point in time, it did clear up things along the way, set the record straight, or at least make it feel that way at the time. But that's not happened for a while now. So you think about it that way, things aren't kept in order as much anymore. It's good for things to be open, left to interpretation, but at some point it could spiral out of control, and I don't think that's a good idea, right? That's why when we get these moments like this video can focus and zero in on one singular event or so. And we will be getting to that shortly after these comments, so feel free to stick by. Glenn, shout out to Glenn. We've got Bye Felicia saying, Corey, can you tell me when Scott lived in Montello or was there? You are so full of shit and really are trying to convince people with all your lies. So this individual here is calling Corey a liar. Got Tom responding to Quinton's. Your statement in the comment section yesterday was excellent. The drama queen's work is repulsive. Then you get the group that follows, Whining Weasel. They have got to have the IQs of buffaloes. Let's hope they don't come across Buffalo Bill. Tom, I don't really accept your comments from yesterday, Corey. The grain shed, then the Bridger, Tracy and Chase story was hard for me to grasp. At one point I heard stories of Chase being afraid of Bridger. You said Tracy came from Montello and I think you meant Montana. Corey, can you go over the Chase story one more time for me? Corey, can you make the days of when each thing took place clear and as correct as you can remember? It would help us understand the situation better. Okay. Not seeing any responses yet. Jacqueline, Candice denied the fact that Brenna lived in her backyard. She said they were outside the backyard. I had already mentioned that B was inside her yard. Bob Farrell, great post. Thank you. Wait, how is this supposed to make sense? Candice Cooley previously saying that Brenna didn't live in her backyard. She said they were outside the backyard. What's the difference between being in the backyard and being outside the backyard? Is that like saying that you got a house, you got the back garden, and in that garden you got a trailer? So a trailer is within the backyard. Outside of the backyard would be you got a house, you got the garden, and then behind the garden, not on the property of the garden, but behind it, that's where the trailer is. Is that what you're referring to, Jacqueline? If so, okay. Bit of switching and changing of info there from Candice Cooley, I guess. But at least from what I've heard from Candice Cooley in one of the East Idaho News Channel interviews, she did say that during custom farming in the past, both Dylan and Brenna were around her area in a trailer. So even if, as long as it's in close proximity, it kind of follows with the supposed story. Not that it links to the Dylan Rounds missing person murder case, but it just gave backstory of Dylan around the presence of Brenna at some point back then. And I was just simply highlighting that if Dylan was in close proximity to Brenna back then, Brenna had the chance and opportunity to do something to Dylan or just to simply get triggered or snap, yet he didn't back then. So more of out of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? Couldn't really predict it, maybe. Okay. That's it for the comments. I think it's now time to move on. So, on to the main part of this video. If you have suddenly joined, welcome. Be sure to catch up on what I talked about before. At the start, I shared my thoughts and opinions, my reaction to the Dylan Rounds latest documentary. Catch up on that. Let me know your thoughts about it as well and my response. What we're looking at right here, right now, though, is to do with the early days of the Dylan Rounds case when Dylan being reported missing, okay? We're not focusing on the Sunday when supposedly the likes of Don, Hatley and Brenna were searching about for Dylan. We're actually looking past that into June. At what time? Early to mid-June, I would say, of when it occurred. It's following pattern and behaviour within individuals back then around that time frame. What was going through those minds? You can add in yourself in the comment section or live chat. You can fill in the blanks if you want to, right? It's the theme of how did key characters within the case react at the time upon hearing news that Dylan Rounds has gone or had gone missing? Before the whole talk about foul play and incriminating evidence on Brenna to suggest that Dylan's been murdered. Before that, but after Dylan being announced missing. What was going on in people's minds? Now, anyone watching right here, right now, If any of you were present in the area or nearby at the time upon hearing that news, what was going through your mindset at the time? Were you just simply thinking, oh, poor Dylan, he's gone missing? What was actually going on in your mindsets? If anyone wants to demonstrate introspection of their own thought process at the time, what was the first thing that came to your mind upon hearing Dylan being announced missing? Was it, oh, poor Dylan, I wonder where he is? Or was it, oh, I hope he hasn't got hurt somehow, or fallen into a hole, a mine shaft, or I hope he hasn't got hurt in a farming incident, or oh, I hope Dylan didn't get bit by a snake or attacked by some wild animal out there? Or was it, oh, I hope Dylan Rounds wasn't kidnapped by any of the bad eggs or forces within the area? Or was it, oh no, Dylan missing? That must mean he's dead. That last one is what we're kind of looking at today, because there's certain behaviour from key individuals such as Don Hatley and Ed Harshbarger, as some call him Ed Harshbarger, that demonstrate signs that they already knew that Dylan Rounds was already dead before other people came to that conclusion and before evidence came on in to suggest and prove that Dylan was murdered. These reactions and behaviours were seen early on in the case, long before it was treated as a homicide, or more so treated as Brenner getting arrested for the first-degree murder of Dylan and the desecration as well. So why does it matter so much? Well, it's just looking at this behaviour, seeing where these individuals were at a point in time, roughly speaking. What was their motive and thought process behind being in that area, and was it because they assumed the worst, or that they already knew what happened, and do they know more? Along that line, hopefully you can understand. What we're going to look at first of all is looking back at Corey's comment from supposedly what Ed Harshbarger or Harshbarger said in response to someone. Let's take a look back. I think it is quoted word for word or so. Read it out, analyse, give you my thoughts, and then we can move on to the maps, okay? Here we are, the comment by Corey, posted 22 hours ago, arguably longer now, as I think I took this screenshot yesterday, right? We did read it out back then, but I need to highlight it again because it links to this video theme and topic, okay? Corey responding to Tom at the time saying, "You're not a pain. At first, I thought it was possible because he called John Sheldon before anyone got down there on Monday. He was the one who told us Dylan was missing." This is Ed Harshbarger Corey is referring to, okay? As for the comment thread, it was talking about Ed Harshbarger, okay, in case you're wondering. So, he was the one who told us Dylan was missing. He said he was on a road trip up to Colorado. I just wanted us to know and give us his condolences. What? That's what Corey's referring to. So at the time of what happened to Dylan going missing, people not knowing the true story or the actual outcome, people just assuming Dylan simply a missing person at the time, and only that it gives a bit of a date as well. Okay. At first, I thought it was possible because he called John. Before anyone got down there on Monday. So at the time, Monday, what Corey is referring to is the 30th of May, 2022. 2 days after what happened Dylan happened to him. Okay? Right, so Monday 30th, before anyone got down there on Monday. So the family and people got down there on Monday later on, but earlier on in the day, he was the one who told us Dylan was missing. Right, okay. So how did Ed hear or know that Dylan was missing before the family. I mean, the family came on down. What, because they instantly thought Dylan was missing? No. They were just concerned as to why Dylan was radio silent, because it wasn't normally like him to do that. And upon confirming with other family members that he was quiet, they decided to go on down and pay him a visit just to check in on him, expecting Dylan to be maybe at the farm or near the Grangeshed property. Candice Cooley, in the early stages, upon being interviewed, were highlighting that we're worried that maybe Dylan Rounds got hurt, injured in a farming accident, and he's out there in the middle of nowhere and he needs help rescuing. That was one of the thoughts Candice Cooley said, how she felt at the time, right? And I think when you don't hear from someone out of nowhere and something feels a bit off, you're going to be concerned. You may take a visit down just to check on in, double check, make sure it's okay, or try and get to the root cause of it. And it's only then, when you're present and you don't see Dylan anywhere, is when the concern and the worry really does crank up and intensify. You're thinking, well, we've not heard any response from Dylan, despite him promising, and he's nowhere to be seen here either. So where else could he possibly be? And that's when all the worry and ideas start kicking on in. At first, Candice Cooley thinking, injury, out there, needs rescuing, still alive. Then following into coming across the boots, which the police have found, and when Candice Cooley was there, that sinked in a feeling of, oh, this is looking like foul play. This ain't looking good. And then slowly sinking in the feeling of Dylan Rounds could well be no longer alive. But it wasn't immediate that. Although Candice Cooley may say everything that went down in the first week, and we knew what we knew since back then, and so on and so on. But even past that point, months onwards, Candice Cooley here and there, I know people could say delusional, bit too hopeful, but it might be part of the grieving. Candice Cooley was hopeful that Dylan Rounds would return back for his birthday, his 20th birthday. By then, obviously, likely impossible, but she still had hope, still tried to be positive. So it did kick in, but over a longer period of time, right? As for Justin Rounds, he didn't say too much about it, how he was feeling. Kind of agreed with Candice Cooley, but that was about it, right? So we've looked at it from that area. As for other people, well, as said, you can fill in the blanks if you want to. But before family got down there on the 30th, it was Ed Harshbarger that was the one that told Corey and John Sheldon about Dylan going missing. Why would Ed Harshbarger contact Corey and John Sheldon? Because they've been in the presence of Dylan Rounds, got on well. Ed Harshbarger has been in the presence of Dylan Rounds too in the past. They're kind of all connected in some way or another, know each other at some point or another, kind of got on well. So you're going to have communication there just to simply let people know what's going on, right? So you're not left in the dark. I get that. And it says, he was the one who told us Dylan was missing. He said he was on a road trip up to Colorado at the time. So are you saying, Corey, that Ed Harshbarger was already on the way to Colorado or in Colorado at the time of telling you and John about Dylan being missing? Do you know, Corey, when Ed Harshbarger packed up and left the area he was originally from to go on this road trip? Was it before Dylan Rounds was taken out, days before, or on the same day? Do you know? Feel free to answer that question down below. That'll be much appreciated. Why would Ed Harshbarger know that early on, before family getting down there? Who told Ed about it then? If Ed wasn't even in the area because he was on a road trip, who contacted Ed first for then Ed to pass it on to Corey and John Sheldon? See, this is the thing. Corey, you might have already explained it, but it was within a long paragraph of other information, so sometimes it's hard to remember it all on the spot. So, as I said, if you can answer it, that would be appreciated. But yeah, who told Ed Harshbarger about Dylan Rounds then? Would it have been Kurt Wadsworth? Even, I don't know if people are going to agree with it or not, but at least from what we saw, that alternative Kurt Wadsworth account online on the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page, the Kurt Woodsman one, which is Kurt Wadsworth, leaving a comment on the recent post of the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page saying how Dylan Rounds was going to call me on the day for a pickup, so then I could take him down to that other truck and then he could get a hold of it. But he never made that call, so what the hell happened? So would that imply that Kurt Wadsworth was the first individual to acknowledge a form of worry and concern? You've got you got Karen Rounds as well, the grandmother, who was promised that Dylan Rounds would make a response to later and call her up saying what's been done has been done, never happened. So that's what led to Karen becoming a bit worried and wondering what was going on. Then supposedly Karen contacted Don Hatley about it, asking what's gone on. And that led to Don Hatley being told by Karen to start searching about just to see where Dylan was, and supposedly Brenner. Candice Cooley back then said that both of them never bothered searching for Dylan on the 29th because there was no footprints anywhere. I don't know if people agree with that or not, but that's what Candice Cooley said. And that was the 29th, Sunday. Then Monday, the 30th, in the morning time, Ed Harshbarger hears about it. So I think the main question would be, who was the very, very first person to hear about it? You know what I'm saying? Who was the first person to become suspicious or become worried regarding Dylan going quiet, not responding back? Was it Kurt Wadsworth, which then led to Karen Rounds getting suspicious and worried, which then led to Ed Harshbarger, which then led to the family? Is there a certain key order? Because I don't think we've ever really heard it properly in depth. But I just wanted to ask a few questions here on the spot regarding Ed Harshbarger, okay? Just to fill in the blanks. Road trip to Colorado, already pre-planned, I assume. Now, what did Ed do after the road trip to Colorado? Did he stay there or move elsewhere after? Anyway, the main line though, Ed's response, the timing of it, close together of what supposedly happened to Dylan Rounds, right? That early on to say, just wanted to give his condolence. It just sounds a bit negative in a way, as if it's already happened. The person has already passed away. I guess condolence can be used in different ways. I think we should just briefly check the definition of that word to begin with. Here we are on screen. We've got the official definition of the word condolence. It reads, an expression of sympathy, especially on the occasion of the death of a person's relative or close friend. It gives an explanation down below, an example. We offer our sincere condolences to his widow. Okay? And to link back, that's what Ed Harshbarger supposedly originally said to Corey and John Sheldon. And that was said by Ed the 30th of May 2022, earlier on in the day before the family came on down to check what was wrong with Dylan. So basically, condolence is really and mainly used when someone has passed away. So arguably, it implies that Ed Harshbarger, by the 30th of May, instantly knew that Dylan Rounds was already dead before the family came to that conclusion and before the police were able to find evidence to support that outcome of Dylan. That's what makes it very suspicious and strange. The only time when you'd be offering your condolences is when you know that someone has passed away, or when you've heard and it's been passed on to you that someone's passed away. So that implies that Ed Harshbarger knew about it, or was at least informed about it. What else does Ed know? It was just strange how it was said so early on, supposedly. I mean, what's your thoughts in the chat about all this? Do you think it's normal? We could do a poll right now. Ed Harshbarger's, Harshbarger, sounds like Ed Asperger's. Goodness me. Ed H, we'll call it that in the poll. Do you think Ed H's comment to Corey about condolences that early on, before anybody else came to a conclusion or evidence was found to support that Dylan was dead, you think that's suspicious? Yes, no. You think that Ed knows more than what meets the eye? Yes, no. Feel free to vote right here, right now, and we'll see what the results are like. So from the looks of it, Ed wasn't within the area at the time, but you already knew what happened to Dylan. And if you already knew what happened, then a day or two before that, where else was Ed Harshbarger before he went on the road trip? Participating in the death of Dylan, being around it, being informed about it, and who by? And the person that informed Ed about it, are they the original ones to be responsible? It seems like within this small little group of people that they did hear about it or had an idea that early on, and you think that the original killer, the main killer, whether it be Brenner or somebody else, then must have been passed on to someone else. And he just went around in a small little group of people. Just seems a bit weird. When you already know. I know you can sense when something might be wrong, but jumping to conclusions over that, a life or death situation, it's a strong statement, isn't it? I mean, is there any possibilities that Ed could have just simply been saying, I'm sorry, but Dylan is missing, I am sorry, and that Ed just used the wrong word and term at the time? Maybe. But you can see how it can lead to a misunderstanding, maybe not on purpose, but it still leads to that questioning. Was it ever cleared up? No. That's why we're covering it right here, right now. So we supposedly have an idea of what Ed was up to at the time, or where he was going, the road trip. We still need to know who told Ed in the first place for Ed to offer condolences. And what was Ed doing days before, on the 28th and 29th? Okay? A few questions still there to be answered. But overall, a suspicious response by Ed, instantly knowing that Dylan was dead before anyone else, and before any evidence came out to prove it, unless Ed was either directly told or received proof of evidence to suggest what happened to Dylan. Okay. Has Ed been questioned enough, or by the police or any of the family members? No, not at all. It's poor, not good. So that's unfortunate there. Now, let's move on to Don Hatley. As for the map talk. Okay, here we are on the map. So yeah, talking about Don Hatley. We briefly referred to him already on the 29th, but what about past that point, sometime in June? Focusing on Don Hatley, an individual that, yes, in the past had a bit of a criminal history, but supposedly hasn't done anything since, at least from what we know of. He's still a walking free man from the looks of things, and that he's possibly in Wyoming, Casper City, if I can remember correctly. Sometimes it does get a bit confusing with all these different names, who is who and where they're all at, but more so focusing early to mid-June, right, when things started unfolding within the case. What was Don Hatley doing and where was he at? Don't have a specific date. That's why I'm saying early to mid-June. But it does incorporate Ty Corbin, okay? So previously, when talking about the area and the events leading up and afterwards, how supposedly Don did not search for Dylan Rounds at the time, as Candice Cooley claims, Ty Corbin said that he himself did come across Don Hatley attempting to search and was upset and crying, worried about Dylan. Now, is that entirely true? Well, it's just supposedly that's come from Ty Corbin's mouth. Does Ty Corbin have video footage of Don Hatley searching at that time? No. Did Ty Corbin record the conversation? I don't believe so. So you just got to listen to his words and hope to believe in it, right? One of those things, just like how we hear from Candice Cooley, you hear from other people out there as well. And you make your own judgments on the matter and how you react to it, whether you internalize it or just simply listen or completely reject it, whichever. But Ty Corbin coming across Don Hatley, Don Hatley being upset. But why? Why would Don Hatley be upset? Because he cares for Dylan Rounds? I guess so. Despite that argument Don Hatley and Dylan had, which was it 6? Did it say 6 weeks? About 6 weeks before Dylan went missing, and Dylan never met up with Don ever since that, all the way up to his disappearance, so never made it up. I can imagine Don being upset in a sense on that basis, what Ty Corbin says. You could be upset when you have bad words, an argument with a person, and then the next time you hear from them is the news that they've been announced dead. And you think, oh, I wish I apologised sooner or patched things up with Dylan before this all happened. You know, all those regrets and feelings, that's probably what may have upset Don the most. How they left, how they parted ways. Not the best outcome. Not even able to say goodbye to Dylan. You could interpret that as being upset because of that. But, you know, we got to try and think of the location. And from what's supposedly been said, what Tom Evans pointed out, and from what he's heard of, that Ty Corbin came across Don Hatley possibly near to the railroad tracks. Or something like that, near railroad tracks. Now, the location seems a little bit suspicious, right? As we said, with Ed Harshbarger, for him to offer condolences to Corey and John Sheldon would imply that Ed already knows that Dylan has passed away. Now, early June to mid-June, at any point then, was it implied that Dylan Rounds was definitely murdered? Not exactly, because it was still ongoing and still being dragged out and delayed, right? We're talking June 19th when the phone was found in Lucin Pond. You know, we're talking, June 16th or to 18th when Brenner was taken in by police, but on unrelated charges, etc. So it was still kind of unknown at that point, right? You got to think that around that time, Don Hatley was the one that surrendered those firearms in to the police, had an interview with the FBI to, I guess, cover his own back. Wasn't directly to do with Dylan Rounds, it was unrelated charges, so was Don Hatley preoccupied there? Possibly. So I'd say probably before that, Don Hatley searching around near railroad tracks. Which ones exactly? Well, there's only like 2 sets, right? We got the tracks here, and then I think we've got some more elsewhere. Can I rotate the screen possibly? Railroad tracks. You got 2 sets running in parallel to one another. Actually, the split off at, I know they don't split off, do they? You know, they do split off at this point here. Okay. Coordinates of where the tracks split off in lucin. And before that, well, they're in parallel to one another, next to each other, which pass all the way. Apologies about deprocessing, that's technology for you, but these tracks pass alongside lucin pond, as you see middle of the screen, as well as top of the grain shed property. Okay, the tracks are on the other side of the wash. Okay, the tracks have been described beforehand in the past, and maybe we can incorporate it in today's video. So from the comments recently talked about that Don Hatley early on in the case was seen searching about near the railroad tracks. In what exact area, not quite sure. Near to the pond, wouldn't surprise me. But nevertheless, that early on in the case, to be searching around near the tracks, why would you be searching there? When Ty Corbin and Lance Kelly were searching in those areas near to the tracks, their reasoning behind it was, what if Dylan Rounds was killed and disposed of near to the tracks where all the rocks are and placed on top of him to conceal Dylan's body? Not exactly buried in the ground, but buried under boulders of rock and dirt, etc. like that. Okay. Did Ty Corbin and Lance Kelly find anything of significance in the case when they were doing that? No. Okay. But, and I believe it was Don Hatley that did it first, for Don Hatley to be searching in a similar area, type of environment, railroad tracks, did Don Hatley have the same idea that maybe Dylan could be buried on the sideline where the rocks are? Is that what was going through Don's mind at the time? For Don to be upset, normally you can be upset over anything, especially these days. But you can be truly upset that someone's gone missing, or even when a pet's gone missing. But you can also be upset when someone has passed away. Now, when it comes to the word condolence, that's normally used when someone's died. That was said by Edvo. As for Don Hatley, Don Hatley, his actions demonstrate that it implies that Don knew that Dylan was dead to be looking in an area where a body could be concealed, like how Ty Corbin said later on. So it'd imply that Don had an idea what happened to Dylan early on, as well as Ed Harshbarger. So they all linked together. I mean, why would Don be out there searching? If Don was guilty, right, responsible in some way or another, why would he be out there searching? To try and blend in, appear as if he cares, so he's not questioned as much? Maybe. Were the tears genuine, or is it crocodile tears? Depends how you look at it, right? But looking about near railroad tracks, out of everywhere you could be searching at the time, and you choose to pick that area. The only other bit of significance I've heard of when it comes to the railroad tracks was a story told by Candice Cooley, that back at the grain shed property, if I can actually find it, bear with me, way down here, back at the grain shed property tool shed, this area here, at some point or another, when Candice Cooley was within the area, there were like horse tracks leading all the way up north to the railroad tracks here, which would mean you'd have to cross over the wash, which is probably awkward to do in some areas. But then again, looks can be deceiving on Google Earth, right? Candice Cooley is the only individual out there to talk about horse tracks leading up to the railroad tracks, and it possibly or likely being Brenner walking his horse up that way. Why would Brenner walk his horse up that way to the railroad tracks? We never got to the bottom of it. There was never a follow-up. There was no further proof or evidence, so it kind of just faded away with time. How strange is that? But the reason why I bring it up to conversation here is because if we're talking about Don Hatley being near the railroad tracks, was it the same area as where those track marks of the horse and supposedly Brenner led up to? If that was the case, was Don Hatley trying to search for Dylan because he felt that's where Dylan was taken by Brenner or so? Or was Don looking for other items which Brenner may have placed there if the tracks lead in that direction? Could you argue that maybe Don came across the tracks before Candace Cooley did, and that's what led to Don going in that direction at the time? I know, a lot of questions, not enough answers, but with time and patience we can get answers, so it's fine. That's what I mean. Certain acts and behaviour can highlight suspicion in different ways, whether it be through verbal communication or physical communication, body language, it does not matter, it can translate end of the day. What we've seen early on, a few different people reacting in different ways, some expecting the worst as if they already knew, others just thinking that Dylan is missing and maybe injured but still alive. So you could gauge it on a certain meter depending on how you interpret it yourself. I said, be sure to share your thoughts down below to what you think truly, okay? Anything else to highlight? Not at this moment in time. Places of interest. Anything else to highlight? Not at this moment in time. Comments by Corey, quite a few of them. We can refer to that at some point. Actually, I did one, didn't I? I did one map analysis to do with Corey's comments about Chase Venstre, Snowville and stuff like that, but the problem was it was misunderstood. Well, I misunderstood Corey's comments at the time because of how it was worded, but we can revisit it once again, don't worry. And as said, the next video likely, providing nothing else happens in between, we'll be looking at Robert Velez on the 28th and the timestamps given. Yeah. I still feel that I wouldn't be surprised if Lucin Pond and near to the railroad tracks and the wash is a hot spot because of what was found there originally. And just a simple fact that, close together, railroad tracks, at least this set here, next to Lucin Pond, which is here, middle of the screen, next to and sandwiched in between the wash here. A lot going on in a small area, right? Hot spots are necessary at times. You look at the Kenny Veach case near Picture Canyon, past Jeremy Canyon over Saddle, Wild Horse Pass, go left, heading... was it north? I think it's west, possibly north and southwest. Heading west to go to Picture Canyon, and just before you enter that, on the right hand side, you got the rock walls with the different caves, mainly shallow, narrow, but in the shape of an M. And opposite, another strange looking cave, and an area which has a lot of interest and mystery behind it and potential. Areas like that you kind of zero in on and wonder what could possibly be there, right? So it's like the equivalent here, okay? So I think that pretty much summarizes the video for now. Leave your comments down below to what you think. You've got your own questions, your own grievances with the case or grievances with Warlike Wrath. List it all down below, it's welcome. We'll see what happens next. Who knows, anything is possible. But hopefully you enjoyed the video, you're able to follow along and for most part of it, understand it. I'll see you next time. For now, goodbye and good night.